All right. So today we're talking all about 10 tips for race day success because we know it's the spring and a lot of you have spring races coming up. Probably some of you have already started these spring races. I know racing season is actually starting to come to an end down here in South Florida because the heat is actually starting to roll in. So our racing season down here in South Florida is actually starting to slow down. But in a lot of areas of the country and in other places in the world, races are starting to pick up. We've got the spring races that roll into the summer races and the fall races that tend to be more of the racing season for other people outside of Florida, we'll say.
Yeah, here, I mean, there's still races over the summer, but nothing longer than like a 5K because otherwise you'll lose half the people.
You'll melt in the middle of the race.
Yes.
So, all right. So today we're going to talk about 10 tips to get you from the alarm clock to the starting gun. But before that, we actually have some bonus tips that we're going to throw in for the night before to actually set yourself up for success as well. Because let's face it, some of you that are listening to this, maybe this is your first race and we want you to walk into that race feeling confident, being able to trust your training and being able to hit that starting line feeling good and feeling ready, and I think that especially if it's the first time you've ever done any race before, or if it's the first time you've done a race of a certain distance, there's just naturally some race nerves and anxiety that surround that. And so we're hoping that this episode will help to just kind of calm some of those nerves down so that you can have like a checklist of like things that I need to go through so that I know that I've got my boxes checked. I know I've got my things in place and now I can just go out and race and have fun.
Yeah, I mean, the longer the race, kind of the bigger that checklist is, and the more you're like, oh, did I plan for everything? So just knowing that you've got a list of like, okay, yes, I've got these things, or I don't need that thing for this particular race, but you've thought of it, I think is really helpful.
Right. So before we jump into the episode, just a quick reminder that if you have not yet left us a review on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts, I should say, please take a minute to just go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and a review. It helps other people find the show. Maybe it helped you find the show. Maybe you went into Apple Podcasts or Spotify and searched up running podcasts, and that's how you found us. So if you want to help other people find us and get the benefits of this podcast as well, we would be so appreciative if you were to just go over and leave us a rating or review so that we pop up to the top of people's search engines or, podcast search results when they look for running podcasts so that we can help more people.
And of course, if you really like this one and you're like, oh, wait, my friend is doing that spring race, feel free to just send this right along to them.
Yeah, you can just press the little share button and share this exact episode. I send podcast episodes to my friends all the time.
Yes, you do.
If I'm out on the run, I'll just listening to something good, I'll just stop really quick and I'll hit the share button and I'll text it to my friends. So if you found this helpful, if you have a friend that's racing, send this over to them as well. All right, so before we jump into our race morning checklist, we're going to start you off with 4 important tips for the night before. Okay, so the night before your race, no matter what distance you're doing. Okay, so this applies to all races, and pretty much most of these tips that we have here today are pretty generic tips for pretty much any distance of a race that you're doing. So the night before, the number one thing that you're going to want to do is set out all of your race gear. Okay. Anything that you might need for the race, you're going to want to put it out the night before. You're not going to want to wait and do this the morning of where you're trying to like go through drawers and figure out what you want to wear. Do all of that the night before. So you're going to want to figure out exactly what you're wearing for the race. You're going to want to choose an outfit that you've run in before because you don't want unknown chafing issues popping up when you didn't expect them. If you race in brand new clothing or brand new shoes, that is not recommended. Make sure that everything that you're going to race in, you have already tried out on a run before.
Yeah, if you just picked it up for a new shirt that you got at the race expo, that might not be the shirt that you want to race in.
Yeah, exactly. So the race day shirt that you get from that race, don't wear that one. Okay. Like this is just from some running veterans. Like don't wear the race day, the shirt from the race during the race. Okay. Wait until after the race to wear that shirt. Wear something that you've run in before. So this is what you're going to want. You're going to want a top. So for women, maybe that's a shirt and or sports bra, or a sports bra and or a shirt, I guess I should say, because the shirt is optional. Some people like to just run in sports bras. You're going to want bottoms. So shorts, pants, capris, whatever you like to wear on your bottoms, socks, shoes, fuel, okay, if you're doing a longer race and you need to bring some gels or some gummies or goos or whatever you want to take, so whatever kind of fuel you're using during the race, you want to make sure to have your watch or timing apparatus, whatever you like to run with. You want to make sure you have your hat or headwear, so, a ponytail holder, headband, whatever you like to wear on your head, a water bottle or hydration pack, and of course, your race bib. Do not forget your race number.
I think the only thing that I would add to that is if you want headphones also.
Oh, that's
I know
a
that
good
some
one.
people like
Yep.
racing headphones, but check with the race because there are still some races that are keeping it real old school style and banning headphones during the race. If you've got headphones, make sure that you've got the playlist of whatever it is. Maybe you're a podcast during it. Maybe it's a long race. You want something mellow, like a book that it's reading to you, or you've got the music that's inspiring you. Get that all figured out. No one wants to be trying to figure that out on race day morning.
Yeah, that's true. But going back to the race bib.
Yeah.
Are you the kind of person that likes to put your race bib onto your shirt the night before, like actually pin it on, or do you wait and pin it on once you're like that morning, once your race shirt is on you?
I don't do a good job of getting my shirt on and off with a race bib already on it.
Okay.
So I don't have a problem putting it on, like putting my bib on the morning of. So I'll have my bib with the safety pin in all four corners, ready to go. And then I will actually put the bib on in the morning.
In the morning.
Because I've put so many bibs on over the years that it doesn't really slow me down all that much.
Yeah, so I think that it's really a matter of personal preference. You guys can put your race bib, you can attach it directly to your shirt the night before if you want to, or you can put it on the morning of. I feel like I put it on the morning of also, like after I get dressed. Yeah. And if you're not wearing a shirt, like if you're going shirtless or if you're going with just a sports bra, you can attach that to your shorts instead. That's where you're going to want to put the race bib, is on your shorts.
Which is probably tricky to get on and off the morning of with the bib already like attached to it.
Yeah, maybe. That's you guys are going to have to figure that out for yourself, to be honest with you.
But
like
have the safety pins with it. Regardless, have safety pins.
Make sure you have the bib set out the night before with the safety pins already attached to it, so that if you do it, if you decide to put it on your clothing the night before, or if you put it on yourself the morning of, either way, it's ready to go.
And, if for bonus points, you can take this entire outfit, lay it on the ground, and then take a picture and load that up to your favorite social media, because that's apparently what we're all supposed to do before races now.
Yep. And tag us.
Yeah.
Tag us at Real Life Runners, and we will give you some race, not props, but encouragement.
There you go.
Yes, we will repost and encourage you guys to give you some exciting encouragement for your race. All right, number 2, pack your bag. Okay. Some people like to bring a bag with them to the race. I know Kevin always brings a bag. And I think this kind of goes back to your days when you used to race, like on teams, like from your cross country and track days in high school and college.
100%. This is rooted in high school cross country. I had a bag.
Yeah.
But I had a bag because I changed from what I was wearing to school into like what I was wearing to race. So there was like school clothes shoved in my bag, but there was always like a few extra things just in case you never knew. So there was always like in case of emergency kind of stuff in the bag.
Yeah. And I like to bring a bag with me too. And I think most people pretty much do. So things that you can include in your bag is a change of clothes for after the race. You never know if it's going to rain. You're obviously going to sweat most likely unless you are in a very, very cold climate. But either way, you're probably going to want to change after the race.
If you're in super cold climate, you're going to want a sweatshirt. So
yeah, exactly.
You're going to want something.
So you're going to want to change of clothes for after the race. You're going to want new shoes or sandals, depending on what you like to change out of and into after the race as well. Maybe a towel to wipe yourself off, some deodorant, a snack or some food for you after the race as well. I mean, yeah, they're probably going to have some post-race snacks. Maybe they'll have some bananas and some bagels or those kinds of things for you. But if you like to refuel with something specific, just have that with you. And you never know, because there are races that sometimes, unfortunately, run out of snacks post-race. So having something in your bag, just even as a backup, is a good idea.
I think the post-race food snack option is like in case what is provided is not, it doesn't feel right for you, or you're looking at, you're like, there's a lot of flies walking around on that, or it just doesn't look like it's going to sit well with your stomach. Because I've had that. I've had post races that, they were giving like warm food options and you walked up and the smell hit you, maybe on a normal day that'd be fine, but you just ran a half marathon. You're like, I do not want to be anywhere near that food. It's nice to have something in the bag.
Yep, exactly. All right. So make sure you have your bag packed. Number 3, look up directions to the race and also determine the parking situation. So know how long it's going to take you to get from your house or the hotel you're staying in. If you're, traveling to a destination race, make sure you know how long approximately it's going to take you to get from where you're sleeping to the race on race morning, and know what the parking situation looks like. Or if you're going to call a ride share service like Uber or Lyft, have all of that planned out ahead of time so that you can leave yourself the appropriate amount of time on race morning, because you don't want to be rushing around stressed out about getting to the race on race morning. You want to have all of that planned out ahead of time so that you can just take that stress and anxiety out of the equation, because you're going to be a little nervous going to the race anyway, right? Like there's just these natural level of race nerves that we have, pre-race anxiety that we have. So we don't need to add to that by also thinking that we might be late for the race and miss the starting gun.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really all about knowing yourself. Like, are you naturally going to have higher levels of anxiety, or are you going to be remarkably mellow on race day? If it's your first race, assume higher levels of anxiety and plan in some extra time. If you've done this before and you generally can roll into races and be pretty mellow, then it's going to be fine. I think it also depends on if you're driving and parking yourself or someone else is coming with you. Like if we're tight on time, but you're driving me,
right,
worst case scenario, you drop me off near the start of the race and then you can go find parking and I'm not stressed out on this at all.
Yeah.
Which is what happened, I think, last race I ran.
Yeah. And this is going to kind of give you a preview to what we're going to talk about in the 10 tips for race morning. But when you plan out your directions and your ETA, because another one for this one actually that I forgot to put on the list is set your alarm. Like, right?
Yes.
Like that's going to be one to add to this as well. But okay, let's stay where we are right now. So look up directions to the race, determine the parking situation, or like Kevin said, if someone's going to drop you off, just so that you have a clear idea of that. Number 4 would be then to figure out what time you want to arrive at the race and make sure that you kind of work backwards and set your alarm to give yourself plenty of time to accomplish the things on the race morning checklist that we are going to talk about. So maybe we'll make the alarm, kind of the last thing that we talk about after we talk about all the things that we want you guys to do on, or not that we want you to do, but that we want you to think about doing on race morning.
I mean,
because you have to figure out how long you need to get ready.
Exactly. Like the alarm clock is kind of a thing, but the guideline here is the morning checklist to get you from alarm clock to starting gun. So the alarm clock is sort of assumed that it's built in there.
But I think that once we kind of go through the race morning checklist, you guys can kind of figure out how much time you might need and when you might need to set that alarm. So set your alarm the night before. Don't forget that piece of it. And that's going to be different for a lot of people depending on what you like to include before your race. And then number 4 is to choose your race word or race mantra. Now, I threw this in as a nice little mental strategy that I like to use and that we talk to our athletes about using, inside the academy, which is having that one thing that you can focus on when the race starts getting tough, when maybe you're feeling uncomfortable, maybe when you want to stop and walk or when you want to quit. Remind yourself of why you're doing it, or have like a mantra that you're using or a race word, just something simple like strong, right? Like I want to be strong. Like think about, and this is one of the tools that we used with the cross country team this year and they loved it.
Yes, they did.
So what I would ask our cross country girls, I didn't really do it as much with the boys. I pretty much did it with the girls. But I would say, how do you guys want to feel during this race? Or how do you want to feel after the race? I kind of mixed it up to kind of see what worked best for them. And so some of them use the word energized, proud, accomplished, strong. There was lots of different words that people chose, and I let them all choose their own word individually because I could just tell them here's our team word, but that wouldn't mean as much because when it got tough, they went to that word. They went to that feeling that they wanted to feel. And so what I would do is I would take a Sharpie marker on the starting line before we race and I would ask every girl her word, and I would write that letter with a Sharpie, like on the inside of their wrist.
Yep.
And that was just their little way of like looking down, when stuff did get hard, or like when they did need that little boost, they could just see that letter and remember their word, and that would help them during the race. And they loved it. They were like, "Coach, you have your Sharpie? Like, make sure you have your Sharpie." Like later in the season, as we went, they always wanted to make sure that I had my Sharpie.
Yeah,
with
that
me.
was on your pre-race checklist.
Yeah.
Just make sure you have your Sharpie.
I had the Sharpie. Exactly. So think about how you want to feel during the race, and think about maybe your word, your mantra. Some people like dedicating their race to someone. And so you can put that person's name, on your arm, or just have it, in your heart as well. So just kind of think about what you're dedicating the race to, or how you want to feel during that race.
Yeah, that's good setup.
All right. Race morning checklist, 10 points to get you from the alarm clock to the starting gun. Let's start with number 1.
All right. Eat something. Okay. You're going to need to get up and put some food into your body.
Yeah.
And this is somewhat dependent on how far you're racing, but there's like a lower level where you kind of want to make sure that you get some food into you. Last night's dinner is still there. Like last night's dinner is still providing you from some energy, but you still want to put like 200 to 300 calories into you a couple of hours before the race.
Mm-hmm.
This may involve you getting up absurdly early.
Yeah.
It's still better to get some fuel into you and to get the digestive system going, because once you start pushing yourself racing, digestion's not going to work as well. So you want to get that food into you early to just kind of get your energy stores sort of topped off.
Right. So when you are thinking about what you want to eat on race morning, you want to choose something that's very easily digestible and that is mostly carbohydrates. You can add a little bit of protein, but remember that protein does take longer to digest, and especially like both fat and protein, both of those take longer to digest and can lead to stomach issues later. So I do like taking in some protein before a race, especially they've shown that with women, especially for longer, harder efforts, taking in 15 to 20 grams of protein is actually a good idea. But again, don't do this for the first time on race day. Whatever you eat on race morning, make sure you have practiced before the race. So before any of your runs, you can practice fueling. It doesn't have to be just before your long runs. People are like, "Oh, well, I only need to eat before my long runs." No, you should try fueling before all of your runs. We just do well as humans if we are fueled versus if we are fasted. And there is a lot of controversy out there. You're going to hear a lot of people say, "Well, I can never run fueled. I have to run fasted. It's better. I burn more fat," all these things. You're going to hear across the spectrum. Okay. But what the research shows, especially for women, is that we do better when we are fueled versus when we are fasted. Okay. Our hormones, we have better hormone levels. We have better performance levels. Like, we highly suggest eating something. And if you are not someone that can eat something before you run, that is something that you need to practice during your training. So
you can train it. That's a skill that you can actually
you can train your stomach, right? Just like you train your legs, you can train your stomach also. Okay. So you want to aim for 200 to 300 calories that are easily digestible and mostly carbohydrates. You can add in like 15 to 20 grams of protein, also a good idea. But if you are going to add in protein, make sure you are eating more like 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours before the race. When you get like within 90 minutes of race time, you really only want to be consuming carbohydrates and easily digestible carbohydrates that you know are going to be easy on your stomach, that you don't have issues with.
Yeah, because that's the last thing you want to do is head off in the race and you're 1 mile in and you feel that you've already got GI distress.
Right.
Like something is already going wrong with your stomach and you have miles and miles to go. All right. What about the athlete that they always skip breakfast? As a high school teacher, I have so many people that I see on a daily basis that just, I never have breakfast. But they never have breakfast, but they always seem to come in with like a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts. So they are in fact taking calories early. It's possible that that's the answer for you. If you are regularly skipping breakfast, try liquid calories, something that's going to get calories into you.
Right. But the Starbucks, you want to make sure that if you get Starbucks or coffee or caffeine, that you leave some extra time for the bathroom.
Well, this kind of slides into the next one, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
But you could add in like sports drink at this one. You could add in juices that aren't, if you've got a good window in front of it, because sometimes people get a little issue with orange juice or something that's a little acidic. But try something that's going to get some calories in. Practice this beforehand. Number two, have something to drink. I like water. I like
Mhm.
making sure that I get in a decent amount of water. If you normally drink coffee in the morning, you should have coffee on this particular morning.
Mhm.
Race morning is not the time to be like, well, I've never had coffee before. I'm good, but I'm going to have it now. Or I have coffee every morning, but not today. Like whatever you normally do, you should continue to do on this particular day.
Right. And coffee does have that diuretic effect to it. So, and it does have that effect of like getting your digestive tract moving, if you know what we're talking about. So make sure that if that's what your body is used to, maybe you need to have coffee so that you can go to the bathroom before you run. Do that on race morning. Okay. Like caffeine is actually a performance enhancer. So caffeine can be a stimulant. It can be a good thing for you and for your performance. So if you are used to caffeine, continue with that on race day. But like Kevin said, also, if you are not used to caffeine, if you do not normally drink coffee, don't think, oh, well, they just said it was a performance enhancer. I think I'll add some in. That's not what we say. That's not what we're saying here at all. Okay.
That is a gambling with a possible performance enhancer. Yes, it has shown to be enhancing performance.
Yes.
For a while, it was like right around races that are like 15 to 20 minutes, and
Mhm.
now they're showing performance enhancements in even much longer distances.
Mhm.
But if you're not used to it, it is also going to stimulate some things inside of the GI system. And if you're not used to that,
Yeah.
you're not sure how to time that system out. Race day morning might not be the first time that you want to play with caffeine.
Right. And the other thing that they're showing in research too is that caffeine, while it can be a performance enhancer, it's not for everyone. It is very individualized. So for some people, they do see a boost in their performance. Some people actually get negative performance, like their performance declines because of caffeine. So we're not saying it's a performance enhancer across the board for everyone. It can be a positive, or it can be a negative, or it can be neutral for you, depending on how your body handles caffeine.
It's like super shoes.
Mhm.
All right. But beyond coffee, make sure that you're also just hydrating.
Mhm.
Like race morning is not like, oh, well, I made sure I had some water the night before, so I'm probably good to go. No, make sure that you are getting to that starting line hydrated, not sloshing, which to me means that you're just continuously drinking. Like you fill up the big cup of water and you make sure that over the couple of hours that you're awake before the gun goes off, that you're consuming all of that liquid.
Mhm. I like to chug water. I'm not gonna lie.
You do,
Yeah,
but you're used to.
I'm used to it, but
Yes.
what I also do is I chug water, like a big thing of water, right when I wake up.
Yes, you do.
So I think it depends on how you like to consume water. I like to consume a bunch of it all at once, and then allow myself that time to like allow my body to process through it. I go to the bathroom a couple of times. Other people don't like chugging water, so they, like Kevin said, have a thing of water and just slowly consume it throughout the morning. So kind of figure out how you like to do it.
I get racing nerves. I don't
Mhm.
mind chugging water. I'm fine with it. Racing morning, I'm like, I don't like to put anything like a big giant breakfast or the whole bottle of water, but I know that I need to get the calories in. I know I
Mhm.
need to get the hydration in. So I have it all set out, and all of this needs to be consumed by a certain amount of time before the race so that
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
Exactly. Moving on to number 3, protect your body. Okay. You want to apply sunscreen and anti chafing products before you get to the race in the privacy of your own home, right? Like,
Yes.
especially that anti chafe. We here in the United States, like Kevin and I, we use a product called Body Glide. There are lots of different products out there now. So it's just anti chafing cream or a stick that you would use. Find the areas where you have experienced chafing before and apply that in the privacy of your own home. Sunscreen, same thing. If you want to wait until you get to the race, you can, but it's just kind of easier to just knock that out ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think sunscreen's easier to me. Sunscreen's easier to put on if I'm completely shirtless. It just goes all over the
Yeah.
place. And yeah, whatever you're using for anti-chafing is really best in your own privacy. But if you forget and you get to race morning and you're
Mhm.
like, oh shoot, I forget to get this on, you're surrounded by a bunch of other runners. So no one is really going to look at you awkward, even when you're doing kind of awkward things.
Yeah, the people were like, "Oh, that's a good idea. I
Oh
forgot to put
yes,
mine on."
yes.
Like they'll see you and be like, "Yes." All right, number 4, get dressed and grab your running bag that you packed the night before. Okay, you're going to want to put on whatever bottoms you've chosen, your shorts, your pants, your shirt with the race bib on it, your socks, your shoes, your watch. All right. If it's cold or if it's hot, there's also going to be other race dependent, or I should say, weather dependent items that you might want to include. So if it is cold, you want to probably grab an old sweatshirt or a long sleeve shirt, something that you can wear while you're in the corral or in the starting chute when you're waiting for the race to begin, but that you're not going to want to keep on. So what you'll see, especially at a lot of the big races, is that people will bring clothes that they're totally fine just throwing away and not ever seeing again. So do not bring your brand new running jacket that you just bought if you're not okay with either tying it around your waist and keeping it on you the whole time, or throwing away and never seeing it again. So a lot of people will go to like Goodwill or local thrift stores and just pick up a couple long sleeve t-shirts that they get for a couple bucks, so that as they start running and their body starts warming up, they can shed layers and just toss them off to the side of the road. And you'll see that in a lot of these big marathons, there are cleanup crews that go through and collect all of that clothing and then donate it to local homeless shelters and things like that, which is wonderful.
Yeah, which is kind of a nice concept there. How cold are we talking here? Okay, because if you're racing, you're naturally going to create some body heat. So it's like, oh, well, it's really cold outside. I want to make sure that I'm not super like freezing at the starting line. You kind of want to be dressed like your race outfit as though it's about 10 to 15 degrees warmer in Fahrenheit.
I was thinking 20 degrees.
It's about 10 to 15, depends on how fast you're running. So like if you're doing half marathon, that pace, that body heat that you're building up is not as intense as if you're like going real hard for like a 5K.
Right. So what we're talking about here is, so say, for example, it's 30 degrees at the start of the race. You want to be dressed for like 45-degree weather.
Yes.
Like, so whatever you would wear going out to run in 45-degree weather is what you should plan on wearing for a 30-degree race.
Right. Which means right at the starting line, before they actually shoot the gun, you start warming up, you're either going to be really, really cold, or you're going to have that long sleeve shirt on that 5 minutes in, you're going to take the shirt off and just toss it off to the side of the road, one or the other. Gloves, also super important for this one. If it's extra cold, go from gloves down to mittens, because if your fingers can actually touch each other, that's actually even more helpful. If it's extra, extra cold outside, something to that effect. Gloves are nice because you can toss those quickly. If you don't have mittens, you can just ball your hands up inside of the gloves. It just let your fingers, the fingers of the gloves fly free. That's always fun. If it's hot and super, super sunny, hats are going to be just a go-to automatically, because that's going to be super helpful. If you get to a water station and it's really hot, you can dump it on your head and the hat is going to hold the moisture on you more than not having a hat. Yeah.
And just a quick little note is that when you attach your race bib, make sure you attach it to whatever that base layer is. Whatever, right? Like, so if you do have long sleeves that you plan on possibly shedding during the race, make sure your race bib is not on those ones. Make sure your race bib is on clothing that you know for a fact that you are going to keep on yourself.
Yeah, and you know, if it's not on the outer layer and they're taking the pictures earlier in the race, just lift the outer layer up so you can make sure that you actually get your race photos.
When you see the photographer, just lift up your shirt so they can show off your race bib.
There you go. Smile and lift up the shirt. Here we go.
All right, so that's getting dressed. All right, number 5, get to the race. So what you're going to want to do is, like, you've already planned out your transportation and your parking and everything the night before. You want to aim to arrive at the race about an hour before that race starts. Okay. Actually, get to your parking, actually get there so that you're there about 60 minutes ahead of the gun. Now, this number also, I think, is a personal preference. This is definitely Kevin's preference. Kevin, I'm definitely with you nowadays.
I think it's a personal preference and very much race dependent too.
I agree with that. And I think that, like, my preference has become my preference because of you. Like, you like to get there no late. Like, Kevin starts to freak out if we are less than an hour before the race. If we get there,
I prefer the phrase display anxiety rather than freak out. I think it's more comforting.
Okay. Kevin displays high levels of anxiety if we are rolling up with less than an hour before the race.
We're literally driving to the race and my foot is like tapping over on the passenger seat.
Yes. And so again, this is dependent. Some people really like to roll up like 15 minutes before the race and just like head to it. Also depends on the size of the race, right? If it's a local 5K that is going to have like 100 or 200 runners in it, you'll probably have more above buffer there, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, the 5K at the Y around the corner from us, I don't get there an hour beforehand.
mhm.
Like I kind of jog over to the starting line. I actually did this. I jogged to the starting line, got my number, jogged back home, dropped my stuff off at the house,
Yeah.
and then jogged back to the starting line.
Right. So
It's
it
fine.
it is race dependent, but like if it's a full marathon, if it's a half marathon, you might want to add some time, especially if it's going to be a crowded one, because you never know how long parking is going to take. And then sometimes you have to park and take a shuttle from the parking to the starting line.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you know all of that ahead of time. And you can find all that information on the race website of like where the parking is located, how you're going to get to the starting line, and all of that information should be on the race website. So have all of that figured out and get to the race with enough time so that you don't have, again, that extra anxiety on top of race day anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, really big races. Shoot, Boston's coming in just a couple weeks here. You got to get to like the starting area so then they can shuttle you out to the actual starting line. So it's all up on their website of like, you've got to be here by this
Right.
time so that you can get into the appropriate shuttle to get to the place. There's
Yeah,
a lot of big races that do
I
that.
think like for Disney, you have to be there at like 2 a.m. or 2:30 a.m. Like
Disney is super early.
the last bus leaves at like 2:30 a.m. so that they can get you to where you need to go. And the race doesn't start till, 6 or something.
Right. And then you got like the New York Marathon, their corrals are so spaced out that people are starting 5 hours after other people. So make sure that you know when your particular starting time is for, if it's a big race that you're doing.
Exactly. Okay, so number 6, you're going to want to warm up before the race. You're going to want to start your warm up about 45 to 60 minutes before the race, which is why you need to get to the race so early, because we want to make sure that you have time to warm up. And the length of your warm up and what is involved in your warm up depends on the race distance. And so from there, why don't you take it?
It depends on the race distance and your race goal.
Yeah,
I
that
think
too.
is also really important that we tie into this.
Yeah.
In like general terms, the shorter the distance is, the longer you want your warm up to be.
Right. Like
So-
if you guys watch the Olympics, you'll notice that 100-meter runners probably warm up the longest.
You've got like a 3-hour warm up for a race that is 10 seconds.
Right. It's the craziest.
And it involves running like 50-meter sprints and then sitting for like 15 minutes and then doing another one. And like the warm-up process is insane. So if you're running a 5K, there might be people that are listening right now, they're like, oh, it's just a local 5K. I don't really need to get there that much in advance. What you do if you want to really warm up to try to run your fastest for the 5K, that's where the 60-minute comes in, regardless of distance. If you're running a marathon, you probably don't need to warm up that far in advance unless you have issues of you have to get into the corral, like that, which we'll get to. But in general, the longer the distance, the less you have to warm up. And your warm up is going to be something like 5 to 10 minutes of like an easy jog and maybe some drills, some mobility exercises. You want to talk about some mobility things that people might want to throw in?
Yeah. So if you have a shorter race, again, like the goal is really important here, because if you are going to a local 5K to just run the 5K with friends, you don't really need a long warm up if time is not your goal. If you are going to the 5K to try to PR and try to race your fastest time and to see what you're capable of, you're going to want to make sure that your body is warm before you hit that starting line. Because I know that my friends and I talk about it a lot. When we're just out on a casual 5-mile run or something, it's like the first mile or two, your body's not even like awake yet, right? They're like, I feel like my one friend, she's like joking. She's like, I think the older I get, the longer I need to actually warm up before these races. So, if I'm running a 5K or a 10K, like I need to get in a couple miles before I even race, because my body just doesn't respond the same way. Like when we go out and do our speed work on Tuesday mornings, we get in at least a mile, a mile or 10 minutes. And sometimes if we're doing higher end speed work, we'll even extend it to more of like a 15 to 20 minute warm up.
I do the exact same thing.
And then we will do like some mobility and drills. So we'll stop. Like this is the thing that a lot of people are like, wait, do you just like stop in the middle of your run? And you're like, yes, I do. Like we will go out and we'll run for about 10 or so minutes. and then we'll stop and I will do some stretches. So some of the ones that I like to incorporate are runner's lunge, like the dynamic runner's lunge, where I'm kind of like moving into that position and moving out of it. I like to add a twist to make sure that I'm getting some rotation in there. I definitely like to stretch my calves out, both with my knee straight and my knee bent. I like to do some hip swings in all directions. So it's really individualized, but you just want to make sure that your body's feeling good. I like to do some torso twisting and some like arm circles so that I can make sure that my whole body is moving and is loose and is warmed up, not just my legs. I think that a lot of runners make the mistake of just thinking about their legs, but running is a full body activity. So you want to make sure that your spine is loose, that your body, like you're able to rotate side to side. Like there's a lot of different movements that you can go through to loosen up before the race, because you want to make sure that you're feeling good when you hit that starting line, especially if the goal is to race your fastest.
Right. And so this whole idea of like warm up 45 to 60 minutes, you're like, okay, what I'm going to go for like a 5 to 10 minute run. What am I going to do for the rest of that time?
Yeah.
This is where you can spend time doing some of these stretches, before like the ultra marathon that I ran. There's not a whole lot to do. And quite frankly, you don't need to warm up a whole lot because you're about to go run 100 miles. So I think my warm up involved moving enough so that when I did the mobility drills, I wasn't doing them from like a complete cold body. But I walked around and then I may have jogged for like a minute.
Yeah,
so
you didn't warm up much before that.
So when I did leg swings, it wasn't on completely cold muscles. I didn't go from like sleeping to trying to run. Just you want everything moving in a comfortable manner, I think is really the ultimate goal out of this. I knew about this a long time ago, but I just reheard about it, is the lunge matrix, where you're lunging forward. You do like a back lunge that then often, is totally how I would do it. I would do a back lunge and then into like a high march, because marching is one of my warm-up things.
I agree.
I need to work the hips in that particular direction. But if you're out and about, you might not have the same equipment that you would have at your house. Here, I do a couple of things with a band. I put a band around my ankles, and then I kick out to the sides, and I put the band under the feet, and I march with both feet. That's the big things that I personally need to do.
Yeah. So you have to, and again, this is one of those things that you can figure out during training as well. Like, what do you need to do before your runs, before your speed workouts in training to make yourself feel good? And that's what you should be doing and focusing on before a race. So if you know that there are certain things that feel really good in your body when you do them, that's what you're going to want to do before the race.
So I think that kind of brings us to number 7, which is super important and not necessarily the most friendly one, but it's very important to runners.
This is a very friendly thing.
Use the facilities. Find a porta potty. Honestly, I think it's important when you first get to the race setup that you find where you're going to go, because depending on the size of the race, maybe it's a little small one and it's like it's based out of a gym. So you're going into the gym and there's like 2 stalls that you're working with.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a bigger race and there's like a lineup of like an infinite number of porta potties. Like as soon as you get there, you have to kind of eyeball how long is that process going to take? Like what's the waiting process going to be? Because I think you need to adjust your like when you're going to warm up and how and where you're going to warm up around how long it's going to take you to deal with the possible line.
Yeah, like before our cross country races, we know that at certain places, the lines for the facilities are going to be ridiculously long. And you're dealing with a bunch of high school girls that not only are going to the bathroom, but they're also in there fixing their hair and just chatting with each other. And so we always tell our team, like, go use the bathrooms now before you warm up, because we don't know how long the line's going to take. So we can cut those warm ups a little bit shorter if we need to. If for some reason the line for the bathroom is super long, we can make those warm-ups a little bit more efficient and a little bit shorter, but we definitely want to make sure that nobody's having GI issues when they're standing on the starting line.
Right. So really try to go. And this is goes back to have your cup of coffee. Like if you have a cup of coffee and then there's like a timeline afterwards, it basically, you could start an alarm clock and be like, okay, I need a bathroom after 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is for you. You probably have a pretty good idea of this. Give it a shot, go, try. You're going to want to go beforehand much more than you're going to want to go in the middle of your race.
Yeah. And one of the things that you might want to pack into your race bag the night before is your own toilet paper or baby wipes.
Yes,
I know that, sometimes people, the bathrooms, they run out of toilet paper and then you have to figure out what to do. So if you have your own toilet paper, if you have your own set of baby wipes with you, all of that, again, you don't have to worry about it because you know you've got your stash of stuff. So that might be something that you might want to put in the bag too.
Good add-on. Excellent. Number 8.
Yes.
Are we ready? Okay. Number 8, gear check. Okay. This is going to be a big one, especially for like half marathon kind of races, where you're probably going to bring a bag and you need someplace to put it for safety. Like if you got keys and a wallet in there, you're going to want to put it somewhere. Most big races, decent sized races, have gear check. Figure out how long in advance the gear check cuts off. Usually about 30 minutes before the race, you're going to want whatever is not with you to run the race, get shoved into your bag, and you dump that off at gear check. I've never seen a gear check that was not efficient. It seems like the most efficient process ever because you hook part of your bib onto your bag and you toss it to the like 5 people that are putting them in the back of a trailer.
Yep.
It's a great process.
Yeah. And if you're not sure what we're talking about, this is like, if you have your race bag, like Kevin said, you can't hold all of your stuff. Where are you going to put it? You don't want to just hide it behind a trash can somewhere. The races have an area where you can go called gear check, go find it. And if you don't know what to do, just ask somebody. They are going to be more than happy to explain to you exactly what you need to do in order to make sure that they store your gear appropriately for you so that you can get it back at the end of the race.
Yeah, 100%. If you're not sure what's going on, ask another runner because runners are super helpful, especially on race morning. Like if that person looks like they're in the middle of a panic attack, maybe find the next person. But most runners are going to be incredibly helpful. If you're like, where do I do gear check? You will probably find somebody that will walk you personally to the gear check area.
Yeah, exactly. So go get that taken care of with about 30 minutes before the race.
Right, which is probably when you're going to take your last like I've brought food, I've brought water, maybe you brought your own like nutrition. If you take a goo before, like if you're running a marathon, 30 minutes out might be the time to take your last goo. Or maybe you bring a bottle of water, like a disposable bottle of water or a cup of water or something with the goo that you're going to have 15 minutes before the start.
Yep.
Something so that all you have is what you're taking to the starting line.
All right. So number 9, you're going to want to run a few strides before you are trapped in the starting corral. Now, again, this is dependent on the race and dependent on the size of the race. So let's just review really quick. What is a stride? A stride is not a sprint. It is not an all-out sprint, but it is a short period of faster running. So your stride should last about 15 to 20 seconds, even up to like 30 seconds, where you essentially accelerate. You start to run until you get to about a level 8 out of 10 on the effort level scale. And then you kind of come back down. So again, you're not going 10 out of 10. It is not a full sprint, but you're just running faster for about 15 to 20 seconds. And then you slow back down, and you do that about 4 to 6 times.
I think they're incredibly important, almost necessary if you're aiming for a fast 5K. I think if you're aiming for a fast marathon and you're not aiming to run like 2 hours and change in the marathon, I'm not sure how critical it is that you push all that fast on the strides.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to tap into that speed in the race. So at that point, strides become part of like the mobility exercises.
Right.
Because you're going to have a much greater range of motion while running that speed than you are just at your marathon race pace. So you're doing it not to be like, oh, I want to make sure that I really fire up, that I've got a good sweat going, that my heart is pushing really hard. That's not the goal if you're using strides before a longer race. You just kind of really want to accentuate like the full range of running motion, which is definitely how I play before a full marathon. Is if you've watched me run strides and you've kind of looked at me and you're like, that's not his normal running form, because I'm really trying to overemphasize like a really elongated full range of motion running stride.
Yeah. And part of strides as well is just the routine, because if you have a pre-race routine, it's really helpful to help calm your nerves, calm your anxiety. Like we, with our cross country kids, going back to our team, we have them do basically the same set of drills and strides before every race. Which are the same set of drills and strides that we do during practice. So when we practice it, they're already used to it, so that when we do that same routine before a race, it's a way for them to just get into their bodies, to get out of their heads and into their bodies. So they just have to start going through that motion. And it's this signal to your brain and to your body, like, okay, it's time to race, right? It's part of that pre-race routine that just gets you ready mentally and physically to go out and do your best.
Which means that it's time to work hard, and you don't have to think about all these anxiety inducing things. It's a routine that we start really early in the season and do before harder workouts, so that by the time we get to these more like end of the season championship races, by the time we make it to the state meet, people get a little nervous. Oh, we're going to the line of the state meet. It's like, no, we're going to the line of a race. We're going to do the same drills that we've done since August. And then we're going to do some strides. Then you're going to do your team cheer. Like, this is just what we always do.
Right.
So I have the same essential routine that I do if I'm racing a 5K or if I'm racing a full marathon, because it's just the routine that I do. Sometimes like the effort level of my strides is pretty much all that I vary, but I do the same routine always.
Yeah. And Kevin's routine and my routine are different, because Kevin's goal and my goal are often different. Like, Kevin does all of these things and then he tries to get basically on the starting line, because pretty much every race that you run, you're trying to win, right? Like, or
at least pretty far up.
Right. You're trying to, that is a possibility. Whereas me, a lot of times I'm either doing it for fun, doing it with my friends, or I'm doing it to challenge myself. But I know that I'm not going to win that race, and that's fine. So I put myself appropriately where I, think I should be in the pack, which kind of takes us to number 10, which is getting into the starting chute. And now it depends, again, what size race you're doing, of how long you are going to be in that chute or in that corral. So if it's a smaller race, you're going to want to head over to the starting line about 10 to 15 minutes before the race starts. If it's a big race, you might be in the corral for a couple of hours beforehand.
That's very true.
Right. And so that will change your pre-race routine. So you have to kind of figure out, maybe have a pre-race routine that you can do for a larger race and then also for a smaller race.
Yeah. And then, if you're in the corral for a couple of hours, you're going to figure out, like, do I just want to stand here for a couple of hours? This is where the like extra clothing that you're not going to race in becomes super important, because you don't want to just stand there. But if you sit down, you've lost all of the benefits of your warm up, because you're just sitting there getting cold. So you want to make sure you have the extra clothes so that you're feeling like overdressed for the current temperature. And you want some movement, but you don't want to exhaust yourself beforehand. So this is like mobility stuff that you can do while you're still in place. So, squats, not like challenging squats, not like I'm going to try and like pick the person up next to me and see if I can squat them. That seems like a bad idea, but like, just think about it from a mobility point of view of, I want my body to stay loose before it's time to actually start racing. So squats, leg swings, make friends with the person next to you. If you kind of hold on to each other's shoulders, you can both do leg swings simultaneously and not fall over. And I mean, everybody around you is going to be crazy pants because you're all running races. So they'll be on board with this.
Yeah, but you can just do things also like hopping in place. Like if you just hop in place for about 10 seconds and then take a break and then maybe do it again, like that's going to keep your body, it's going to keep your heart moving. It's going to keep your legs warm. Air jump ropes. So that's a perfect thing, like where you're just doing those double leg hops. Again, runner's lunge, like I like to do. That's going to take a little bit more space around you, but it's okay if you put your hand on the ground. Like, some people don't like touching the ground. So maybe you kind of work your way over to the side where you can put your hands up on like the fence.
Sure.
What is that? The corral, the metal gate, like the metal gate. Right? So maybe you put your hands up there, you find a curb, like curbs are great because then you can kind of do some stretching, some calf stretching and stuff included. But any of those drills that you're going to do, like high knees, butt kicks, marching, hopping in place, runner's lunge, toe walks, heel walks. There's lots of drills that you can do that don't take a lot of space for you, that you can do in a crowd as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like your focus here is just not getting stiff, spending so much time in that. And if you're like, well, I don't know, I have to be here for 2 hours because you're doing Disney. So you're going to be a little stiff at the start of that race. Yeah. Honestly, I think it's something that you're going to have to accept, that if you're in the corral for a couple of hours, you might not be as 100% ready to go at the start of that.
Yeah.
So then you just have to take the first mile or mile and a half a little slower and more comfortable so that your body can ease into it. Because the last thing you want to do is take it out super hard on stiffer than normal muscles.
Yeah. And we talked about that in, I think, a recent episode about race strategies.
Yep.
That was, I think, on the podcast. It might have been inside of our coaching program, inside of the academy, but
No,
I'm
we had
pretty
a
sure it was
podcast
on
on
a
that.
podcast
Yeah,
recently as
different
well.
race pacing strategies.
Yeah. But we did go into our race strategies on a recent coaching call. So that was that was a great conversation. But the last thing that you're going to want to do, like kind of in those final minutes, is I like to, just kind of like close my eyes. Like if you feel comfortable closing your eyes in a crowded space, that's kind of a personal choice. Like some people don't like to do that, but I like to just kind of like, again, go back to like remembering why I'm here, what my goal is, taking a few deep breaths to try to calm my nervous system down, right? Because a lot of times we get so hyped up. And anxiety can be a helpful thing, right? Because anxiety releases adrenaline, and adrenaline is what you need to run fast and perform. But if we are overproducing, adrenaline, and if we are overly anxious, it can actually set us backwards. So I like to kind of just take a few deep breaths and just maybe even visualize your race, visualize yourself going out and feeling in control. Imagine yourself racing well. Picture those hard portions that are going to come up and see yourself overcoming those challenges. Tap back into that race word or that race mantra that you chose for yourself the night before. Or like, if you have a Sharpie marker, maybe you already wrote it on your arm. Like, think about that word. Think about the person that you're dedicating your race to, whatever it might be. Just kind of use that moment or those, final moments before the race to ground yourself, to remind yourself, okay, I'm here. It's time to race. I'm going to do my best. Your brain's going to want to talk about all the reasons that everything is going to go wrong, right? Your brain's going to be like, we're not ready for this. This is going to hurt. It's going to start throwing all these negative things at you. And it's up to you to, you can allow those things to be there, but then decide to focus your attention elsewhere. Focus your attention on the outcome that you want. Focus your attention on the feeling that you want to feel during the race, after the race, and when you focus your attention on those things, then those outcomes are going to be more likely to occur.
Honestly, sometimes if I'm like extra nervous before a race, I'll look around and find the nervous people around me and start chatting with them.
Yeah.
Which
is so funny because that's not your normal personality.
It is not my personality, but it is a coping strategy that I've got. Normally, my coping strategy in large crowds is to not talk to people.
Right.
But my coping strategy before race is to talk to people. I find it calming. I find it super calming to me to try to help somebody else calm down. So to me, I find it soothing if someone around me looks super anxious and nervous. I find it comforting to sort of help calm them down and be like, no, don't worry, you've got this. Think of your preparation. And all of the things that I say to them to help reassure them that they're prepared, I'm totally telling myself also, and it helps calm me down before the race gets going.
Yeah.
Or I trash talk one or the other.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that you can do is kind of, you can also start to like look around you and be, wonder because I know you talk to people and you're like, well, what time are you going for? Like,
I like to find the people that I'm going to be with.
Yeah. You try to find your people that you might want to stick with during the race also.
Yeah,
so
which is nice.
I think that there's going to be, and there's a lot of runners that really like to connect with other runners in that pre-race shoot area.
And there are others that don't.
Right.
So like if
they have headphones on, don't try to talk to them.
Right, which is totally fine. Like let them be in their zone, but that's fine. But there are also plenty of runners that would be like they may be just as nervous. They may love having a running partner. If you ask them how fast they're going, it turns out you're running near the same speed. Now you have a running buddy for the race, and that's going to make everything easier.
Maybe. So head out there and then have a good race, right? Like basically just get yourself ready. And then when they shoot the gun, smile and start running. All right. So we hope that this was helpful for you guys to just calm your nerves, help you feel more prepared for this race. And if you found it helpful, again, share this episode with a friend and help spread the running love. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. This has been the Real Life Runners Podcast, episode number 303. Now get out there and run your life.